Hello and welcome. If you haven't joined us before, my name is Jack Jiggins and this is Ben Richards. If you're joining us again, thanks very much for following. We are two serial entrepreneurs that run a multitude of businesses in property and construction. And in these live episodes, we share the highs and lows of business and hopefully give you some tips so that you can improve your businesses too. It's the 12th of July for the podcast listeners, and we have a very varied and exciting episode ahead. So to start off, we're going to do another interactive sort of quiz, I suppose, and you're going to help us choose some site branding for our site in North London. This was hugely popular for our door colour choice on Marlow and also our branding for Thames. So I'm super excited to see what the popular votes are. What is stretch senior debt? We'll be talking about what stretch senior debt is and how we might be using it in our business. And then feeding on from that, mezzanine costs and how to balance out mezzanine costs and when you might be using that in your own business too. We'll be talking about a planning approval, planning approved, and find out how we got that planning approved. And we'll be talking about direct to vendor success. If anyone's been following our property journey, they know that most of the stuff that we do is on market. But we do have a surprise for you today. What we've learned about affordable housing, we have asking the question, what offers do you have currently? So that's all about how to secure your next deal and ensure you're asking the right questions. And then last but not least, what does an MEP drawing package look like? And before you clutter off onto your weekends, we've then got a couple of questions that have been asked, and one of them is actually really important. So make sure you stay and hang around.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. Cool. And before we jump into the main episode, we are celebrating 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So thank you very much for those people that have subscribed. If you're listening into this or watching this and haven't yet, click down below, wherever it is on the screen, then please do subscribe. It goes a massive long way to help kind of share the good conversations wider afield. So we're trying to get the subscriber base up as much as possible. So do subscribe. On to question number one, or topic number one, which is very interactive and hopefully quite engaging for you guys. We want to know in the comments below what option you would prefer. So a little bit of background. This is for our development in Muswell Hill, which is this one in, I've not got those photos very well, have I? We've got the front CGI, the rear CGI, and a kitchen CGI, internal CGI, where we're converting a pair of semis into 9 flats. We are going to market very soon, hopefully to get some off-plan sales. And we are now trying to come up with our site branding that then educates our marketing brochures, the micro website that we're creating, the hoarding on the front of the site. And this is really crucial to really get this right and create the correct buzz around what we're doing. So we've got 3 options here. This has been created by Oliver James at Property Branding. He's going to be working with us to brand this site, and we want your input. So I'll go through these individually. We've got option A. So we have decided that the name of the site will be called Maple Rise. This site is particularly located on the big hill up towards Muswell Hill Village. Directly opposite the property is a large sort of stretch of maple trees on the other side of the road. So it felt right. Went through various names, to be honest, but ended up with Maple Rise. We like the name. We just want to look at the branding and the colors associated with it. So we've got this first option, which is a green color. And for those that are listening on the podcast, obviously you can't see this. So head over to our Instagram or tune in on YouTube to see what these were and give your opinion down in the comments below. We've got option A, which is the green Maple Rise. We've got the very leafy A on this word maple, all to do with sustainability, green, very kind of natural, which very well suits the interior sort of calming tranquility of the internal interior design. B is a bit more leafy, I guess you could say, or sort of autumnal. The idea with this, you've got the sort of M in the icon. The Maple Rise text is a bit more contemporary, and then you've got the colors, which are a lot more sort of neutral tones, and a bit of autumnal kind of browns in there as well. So that's option B. And then this is option C, which again follows the sort of autumnal type nature of a brown stroke gray sort of color branding, and then this falling maple leaf design with the text being a little bit more traditional. And that's it, I guess. That's how I would describe them. Oliver described them a lot more eloquently than I have there, but ultimately, if you can see them on the screen, you're going to be drawn to one of these. Option A, green. Option B, a little bit more neutral tones, and then C, autumnal sort of browns and greys. Jack, what's your initial gut towards?
Do you want to go back to the 3 on 1 page? I'm a classic annoying person here. So my request, which I said, is I would like to see text B and C with a new logo that looks like the leaf shape, but just the outline of the leaf shape in all 3 colors.
Say that again.
So I basically want 2 options.
I realize I've fucked up here as well, because I've put option B as I've got them the wrong way around so I think let's stick to the route that I did it. So A is the green one, B is this one. In fact, I'll change it right now rather than messing around. But yeah, you explain what you want and I'll change it.
So B and C, I really like the text. I like all of the colors. I think all of the colors are good. I like green. I like the pastely gray type color, and I like the autumnal color. But with the guys, but I kind of feel that it's very Londony zone 1-esque, and we're not quite there. We're that to me looks like towers or something very mansiony. And I know this is sort of like suburbs, but I like the leafy aspect because it does have a massive garden, So I love the autumnal lean on it. So I would like option B and C with the wording, with a new logo on both. I don't like either of the logos as they currently are. Maybe just an outline of the leaf, because I think that sort of conker maple leaf is really cool shape. You can actually kind of see it blurred out on the right with the option C on the right hand side there. Yeah, that part there. So I'd like a logo like that, maybe less a leaf falling and more just like an outline of it. And then I'd like all 3 color palettes, and then I'd like to make a decision. But
you'd like to see those changes made, and then those changes with the logo and the text in each color to then make a decision.
Yeah, but I would go as far as saying text from either C or B, and then a new logo on either of those, and then color. I like all of them, so I will let the masses decide. Well,
I mean,
I feel like we kind of have to go. I feel like we kind of got to go with B or A, because just like a I don't know, what would you call that? Like a really light grey is getting used quite heavily. So I would like an orange hint to that. So maybe option B color wise.
Yeah, I think option C was actually the sort of similar color that we had for Sunset Court. I mean, my instinct is, I like all of option B in terms of I really actually like the logo of this and the more contemporary text. But I do like the green. So yeah, it'd be interesting. Let us know down below. Option A, B, or C. The choice is in your hands. And then tune in for the next couple of weeks to find out which one we decided to go with. Cool. Point number 2. What is stretch senior debt and when should you use it, Jack?
Yeah, cool. So this topic and the next slide topic, which is actually around mezzanine finance, was just really topical in our business this last week or two when we're pulling some finances together for the refinance of Tame. And on the next slide, I'll actually show you the sort of ratio calculations that we're going into work out the cost of capital, because you need to be doing these calculations as a developer and a business owner. You'll see that this capital stack is proud to you, sponsored by Merry Oaks. Shout out to Sam Lowney and his team at Merry Oaks. I actually just Googled it, and it was at top page. I was very impressed, and his SEO is working him favors to get onto this alone, let alone probably other eyes on his capital stack. So stretch senior debt is basically where your senior debt is stretched, funny enough, so that it's more of the capital stack than if it was just a regular senior debt, for the reasons that you might need to compress the amount of equity or mezzanine finance going in, and as a result your debt piece would cost more money. So there's people that specialize in this, and funny enough, Sam Lowney used to work for one called Hilltop Credit Partners, and you'll probably be paying them 14 to 15% for their total senior debt piece. And what that then means is you're putting in less cash, but the debt piece is more expensive for everything that all encompassing. So there's a ratio where it actually offsets the bulk of because obviously if the bigger part is more expensive, it kind of offsets the value of it. So a common place to be using stretch senior is when you really want your equity to go further, or potentially you're looking at maybe buying a new site and you want to get some equity out of an existing site. So you're getting stretch senior in place so you can push it into a new site. Well, obviously we're not financial advisors, and I'll seek your own financial advice on it. But what I would be really conscious of is if you are doing something like stretching finance, the cost of that capital is greater. Make sure that you're on the mark with overruns, sales rates, and things like that, because you can become into, even though it's great getting hopefully a higher rate of return on the capital and the equity in, it may come and bite you in the arse when things are delayed or costs overrun. So we don't tend to use too much stretch senior. We've used it on a couple of flips that we've done in mine and Rob's Central Suites flipping business, where we sit, we know the model, we know the assets. It's not that much more expensive. It's probably going up from 11 to 12%. It means that we can just do more deals, which is great with our own capital. When we do joint ventures in XP Property, it's kind of nonsensical to gear, through the roof and to really stretch that position, because we're working with an investor. They might not want to take that risk, and their position is obviously sat behind that. So we try and keep a fairly modest loan to value perspective with investors on board. So these are all the things to take into consideration, but there is stuff out there in the market where they can go up higher. Where I do think they really do work is when you arrange a senior debt facility and a mezzanine debt facility, that mezzanine debt, which is basically a more expensive slice of money between you and the bank, it's all your equity in the bank. They sometimes come with their own legals, their own valuation, their own underwriting team, their own preference in how documents are all drafted up. And fundamentally, you can spend an absolute fortune getting the bank comfortable and them comfortable as a finance lender, as well as yourself. So what the great thing about a stretch senior is all under one roof. So you're sort of killing two birds with one stone. So that is where it's great. And you will find I suppose you can go to 3 or 4 lenders and compare different lenders' terms, but you will probably find the bigger deals warrant this type of funding structure of senior debt, then Mezz, then the equity. Whereas the smaller deals, it might just be easier and quicker to do a stretch senior debt or just straight senior debt. And I'm going to come more on to Mezz very shortly.
Nice. Hopefully that's answered a few questions for people that want to make their equity stretch a bit further. If you've got any questions, as usual, drop them in the comments below, and we can attack them either this week or later next week. Cool.
And here comes
straight into
it. This tallies straight into it. So this is an example of our Tame site. So we have in Tame an investor who's on a loan note. So we've got a loan that's into the SPV. And we have the option to refinance because we've finished 9 of the flats. We will be soon to finish a further 11 flats, but we're phasing the project. So we finished the 9 onto the 11 with a development facility, and we've re-geared the commercial leases. So we're currently in the market for new debt finance. So we're speaking to the existing lender, we're speaking to new debt lenders just to make sure everyone's honest. But we have the opportunity, because there's plenty of planning uplift and there's value that's being created, including profits, we can actually gear it higher than we did when we bought the site, because we've added value essentially. Now, as a result of that, we could actually gear it up, pay some of the investor down, and to do that, we've got to weigh up the cost of gearing it higher from the bank's piece to paying down the investor piece. So normally Mezz is where you get a bank first charge debt facility. Mezz sits on top of that so that you put a smaller amount of, and the Mezz helps you get a deal bought, or maybe even do a couple of deals and stretch that money further, which is what I mentioned behind this stretch senior. But in this instance, we can actually get our regular senior higher because there's margin there. So because I'm sort of classifying our investor as the Mezz piece, we're weighing up a sliding scale between leveraging it higher and then paying down some of the Mezz, because the Mezz is more expensive. You can imagine to pay 18 to 25% for mezzanine or loan fixed products on your subject to the market and your deal. But then the bank debt might be 10 to 12%. So as soon as you slide that scale up, you're working out paying down certain amounts, and there's basically a sliding scale because the rates go up and up and up as the leverage goes up. So for an example, if we were to gear this to like 85%, which you can see the red markers on the right there, that is actually a lender that is happy us paying down the majority of that Mezz money, but it pushes the cost of the debt finance to about 14.5 to 15%. And then because that's a larger chunk of the position, it actually makes that more expensive. So what you need to do is find a happy medium between paying down Mezz or second charge debt and keeping in first charge debt as low as possible to keep the loan to value low so that you are paying like 10%. So the example on the far left, which is the cheapest, is a balance between really cheap senior debt, which is actually at 10%, paying down a bit of the Mezz, but not so much, and not gearing it so that you get into the really expensive facilities. So this is like a model that we've been running to make sure that we're making the right decision on finance. And to put it in perspective, it is worth spending the time doing this, because you can see there along the bottom that you naturally think the more we get from the bank and the more we pay down the investor on the sort of 20% return, the cheaper the cost of finance is. But if you actually look at it, it's actually £200,000 more expensive, because the debt piece goes so much more expensive for that leverage. And that's definitely something you need to think about when you're sort of sliding that scale of where the money is and where it's going. And that can also apply for if you're investing in another business or another scheme. Is it worth keeping your capital back to keep your project going, to save on that cost of finance? That makes sense.
Very good. Yeah, no, completely. I mean, effectively, the crux of it is that if you're paying more on a bigger chunk of the pie, it's better than paying
but
a lower amount.
Your brain naturally, well, most property developers' brains will be trying to gear up with the bank as much as possible and pay down the Mezz as much as possible. But in actual fact, sometimes there's a blended average, which works out a lot more. So the result is we actually keep most of the Mezz in, and we just go with a much cheaper lender that's happy with the lower loan to values, because we can attack that market, because their risk for appetite is at 65% loan to value.
Nice. Good stuff. Cool. If you're enjoying this, please do rate us on Spotify, and we would really love you to rate and review us on Apple, because that does go, it goes really far to tell the algorithm that people are enjoying this, and spreading it a bit further and allowing us to increase that viewership. So if you are listening, if you are enjoying this, rate us on Spotify, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and please just share it with one person that you think might get some value from it. That's all we ask. Cool. And another great success this week. So we actually had the planning approval through for the second phase of our project in Tame. So you can see it on the screen. We took a few people around on our site tour to this site. We've got 9 units in the center of this development, which are being concluded as we speak. We're about a month to 6 weeks away from being finished on those 9 units. I've been addressing over the last couple of days the sales strategy and when we're going to be launching this and how we're going to be launching this. And actually, I think, Christina, please make a note of that. I'll probably talk about that next week, because we've now finalized the structure of how we're going to do it. It might be quite interesting for people to hear how we're going to be launching this in various different stages to different people, and how we've already gained interest from the wider public with some of the site signage that we've put up. I mean, just a bit of a spoiler alert, but we've got 13 people that have raised their hand up, filled out all of their details, purely from the footfall through this site over the last month or so. That's massive. If we can secure even just one of those people and get one of the 9 units sold now where it's not finished, that would be a massive result and a massive win. So that's without actually instructing a local agent. That's purely with internal marketing and sales that we've been doing ourselves internally. So that's phase 1. And phase 2, like I say, has just been approved under Class MA. If you listened last week or the week before, we were talking about Class MA and Grampian conditions, with coupling those with external work. So these dormers and all of these inset balconies and these gardens, etc., were done all part of an external works application. And then the change of use under the Class MA was secured this week to get the further 11 units. So super happy about that. It means that we're also having conversations with our sales agents now about packaging up the marketing for that second phase. it's a weird blend. And this is another top tip, really, when you're looking at property developments, you want to have a really good mix of types of units. So in phase one, we've got some large 2 beds and some large 1 beds, and that's kind of all we have as part of phase one. But phase two has a lot smaller units from a studio and a 1 bed perspective. So if people are coming and seeing the quality of the finish of phase one, but maybe can't quite afford the units in phase one because they're slightly bigger and more expensive, we can then put a floor plan in front of them and say, oh, phase two will be complete early next year. If you want to secure one of these smaller units, which is in your price bracket, here you go. So it's giving us loads of flexibility with how we're phasing this site and the size and cost of the units that we've got on offer. So yeah, super excited. We'll start the detailed design package, or we have started the detailed design package. So in the next couple of months, we'll be finalizing those details, getting costs from the contractor to push on with phase two, and starting works hopefully in October this year, subject to Jack sorting out the Mezz finance and the stretch senior finance or whatever we need to do to get that phase two started.
Yeah, what's going to happen is all those lenders are going to see, where we're at and sharpen their pencil, and we'll have an option on Monday and we'll be off.
We shall see. Fingers crossed. Cool. So direct to vendor success. You've been having some good feedback on your outreach.
Yeah, so we're not XP and Central Suites are not massive advocates for direct to vendor or approaching people that frequently from a letter campaign. So direct to vendor, for those of you that aren't aware of it, is when you build a database or an address list, or even just driving past properties and you make note of them and you send them a letter to try and buy or purchase, lease option or rent or whatever you want to do to their site or the land or house or whatever it may be. We've been sending out direct to vendor letters in Central Suites, mainly because we wanted to drive forward our deals, and it's a difficult balance to make. And the reason that we don't do it so much so before is because it's not our job to convince someone to sell something, because it's quite an emotional decision for someone to come to terms of selling their property and or selling their land or farm or whatever it may be. But where direct to vendor is great is when you just get in between them deciding to sell it and want to put it and choosing which agent. If you get in between that period, you tend to be able to potentially transact on that property without them paying an agent's fee, and also before you get competition in the market. That does also pose some other issues, like they might not get closure that they're getting market value and things like that, which is completely fair enough from a layman's perspective that doesn't necessarily know the property market inside out. But the reason I wanted to share a success is because we've ran 3 campaigns. We spent £2,500 on postage and hundreds of calls, and we finally got the first deal from that batch of letters. Now, £2,500 sounds like a ridiculous amount of money for a bunch of letters, but we believe that we have got in there before they've listed with an agent. We think we're paying fair value for the property, but there's a lot of scope with the property, and it's within our core area. It's exactly where we're focusing to hit. So this is in a town that we've invested a lot in, and this property will actually be a flip. So we'll buy, renovate, and sell. And it's just a bit of a sort of, sometimes you've got to build a process and stick to it, because on the 3rd campaign, I was like, I wish, we would have had more results to this. So to give you a bit of a ratio, I think we've got about 850 addresses on each campaign. So that, I mean, I wouldn't even want to work out a ratio on that. What's that? It's 2,000, close to 2,600 letters, 700 letters to get that one result. But we've got the one result. We're in legals, and it's just interesting to see how maybe other people might do direct to vendor marketing. So we have one very bespoke individual letter, and actually the best. So whenever I speak to anyone, and we've had over 100 calls, we always ask the question, what was it that drew you to our letter and to pick up the phone and call us? And pretty much every person that we've spoken to, the first bit of feedback that they say is that we've noted a local asset or building or development that we've delivered. So for an example, in an area where you've already delivered something, or you bought a house on this street, we've noted that in the letter, and it's come across really positive because it makes it look like we're active, makes it look like we're local, which we are, and they, you know, might even remember that house or that building and seeing the scaffolding up, and then remember, oh yeah, I did see that go up last year or whatever. And that's been the priority initial feedback that we get. Obviously, there's obvious stuff like be to the point, don't apologize for sending them a letter, because it may be to their benefit. A lot of people open with, I'm sorry for the unsolicited approach. You're not sorry. You're buying it. It could be a win-win situation, so don't apologize. Getting to the point, you've got to be, you know, you can lose people within the first sentence. That's why I don't apologize, because if you haven't got them within the first sentence, which I'm sorry for the unsolicited approach, I would stop reading from a interest perspective. But if I got a direct offender letter, I'd read it anyway, because I want to know how it compares to my one. But if I was a member of public or a homeowner, I would probably throw that straight in the bin. And then you've got things like the envelope structure, the efficiency structure. So we actually used windowed grey envelopes that have the full address and a full stamp, so not a frank. There's loads of little tips and techniques, but definitely split test them. Definitely ask people that call in why they called you from your letter, what they liked about it, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously try and buy their property. But yeah, we had a success, which is in legals, which is great. Dawn did a great job of actually negotiating the deal and sort of taking the vendor through the process. And now it's secured. We're lining up investment to get this one bought and turn around.
Nice. Good stuff. So we've been looking at some slightly bigger schemes recently, and as soon as you start getting above 10 units, that is a full planning process, you're going to venture into the world of affordable housing. It's not something we've really had to deal with when we've done the likes of Tame, which is 20 units, the old Maltings, which is 23 units. A lot of those have been done under permitted development. So there's actually no affordable housing requirement, which is one of the benefits of doing commercial to residential properties under Class MA permitted development. But we're now looking at some slightly bigger schemes. We've got a MOT garage in South London that we're looking at. And it's a different way of approaching things, because as soon as you get over those 10 units, which is where the affordable housing criteria kicks in, it really is a different kettle of fish. And we weren't necessarily completely sure how to be analyzing these types of deals. And some people out there that's gone through this process will say, well, there is an affordable housing viability assessment that you can do. So if there is an affordable housing contribution that is really killing the deal, you can then get third-party surveyors involved to prove that it isn't viable to construct X amount of affordable housing on site, or provide £200,000, for example, of off-site kind of contribution. It's a way of reducing the amount of affordable homes that you have to create on site by doing that viability assessment. And that's fine, but you don't want to get all the way through the process to run the risk of trying to reduce that contribution amount, because by that point you've already probably bought the site, you've spent hundreds of thousands of pounds getting to that stage, and it's just too risky to get that far down the line without actually having a concrete understanding of what your affordable housing contribution will be. So I'm going to run through some of the top things that I've learned, having spoken to a couple of affordable housing specialists, and these people are out there to help guide you through the process. They have really good connections with registered social landlords and HAs, housing associations, and the idea is that you package up your development and say, I have got 30 units in this location. Here are some active housing associations in this area. You present the case to them. You tell them what effectively your package price needs to be. And they say yay or nay effectively. But if your package price is basically, they generally split things down in two. So you've got the land price, and that's the price that they're effectively buying the land for. And then you've got the build/development price. And what that normally means is they'll pay you for the land, X amount. And then you as the developer would deliver the build contract on their behalf. So they kind of forward fund the development costs. How this works basically, and what the feedback we've got is if we were looking at the site on a market value perspective, and let's say the site was worth £20 million on open market residential values, what typically would happen is that the HA are most likely to cap out at around about 80% of market value in terms of the offer that they can give you for that stock. Now, a lot of the time it will be more like 75%, sometimes even less, depending on the actual asset that you're providing, the location, their needs in that area. But let's take 80% as an open market value. So if you look at that, £20 million on an open resi market, if you're factoring that into your costs, and then you're told that actually the HA will only offer you 80% of that for a 100% affordable site, then that's £16 million. So you've lost £4 million in GDV effectively. So this is why as soon as you go over that 10 unit threshold, a lot of the deals that we look at just don't stack because you're taking such a haircut on the affordable stock. Now, if you've got a mixed scheme and you've got 30 units whereby 15 of them are private and 15 are affordable, you still get 100% market rate for selling the private stock, the 15 private stock. But the 15 units that are affordable, actually, the package deal for that is more likely to be the HA paying you 55 to 60% of the market rate for those 15. So when you blend it all together, you still get to that 75 to 80% of what the open market value would be. Which is why deals, it absolutely kills deals, and that's why the viability assessment process is brought in. The land value, we learnt that the sort of typically the maximum percentage of that package price for land is about 30%. So the HA is often only willing to pay 30% of that package, not 30% of sort of residential GDV, private GDV. It's 30% of that package price, which I explained earlier, is sort of the land plus the build cost contract. So, on an open market sale, it's probably not far off, a GDV from a private resi sale. When we're selling land, we often look somewhere between like 30 and 37%. Nowadays, because build costs have escalated so much, that percentage is being squeezed down. But that's the figure that we were given, 30% of land value. Land value maxing out at 30% of the package price. What you will need to consider is the build contract. Is the people that I know that are developers that work in the HA space have their own internal contracting arm. So they're making a contractor margin more so. But the difference is that it's forward funded by the HA via various grants from Homes England and various other places and the HA. So your risk is far less. The issue that we've seen from the likes of, and I know Dorian's talked about this in the past during COVID, for example, where you're locking in that package price at X value and build costs ramp up significantly as soon, straight after you signing up for that package price, you are locked into the build contract at the lower value. So if your costs escalate significantly, your margin is getting smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where it could be you could end up paying for the build yourself because the build costs have escalated so much, and that's a potential risk. But most people see it as a de-risked way of doing things because it's forward funded. You've got a guaranteed exit as soon as the units are finished. It hands straight over to the HA, and that's why it's, from a risk perspective, far less than private resi sales. One thing that was really interesting to note is that the contractor requirements for a lot of these HAs, if you're signing up to a £12 million build contract, then they will expect the contractor delivering that scheme to be about 4 times the build contract amount. So if you're building a contract of £12 million, they would expect just under a £50 million revenue type business to be delivering that. So you can't really get your mate and his below, five gang of builders down the road to sort of start delivering those schemes. It has to be a good tier contractor that's going to be delivering those bigger schemes. And then one of the other big important sort of implications are to do with VAT. I hate VAT. It's the bane of my existence. I still don't really understand how it works. But fundamentally, if the site that the HA is effectively buying and forward funding is elected for VAT, they will expect you to build on what's called a golden brick process. So normally what happens is the HA, you agree the package price, you agree the land price, you agree the build price. If there is no VAT included, they can release that land price and pay you that land price from day one. If there is VAT on the land purchase, they can't give you the land value until you have demolished the site, built the foundations and laid that first brick, which is that golden brick, and that's when the VAT implications change. So that's something really important, because the VAT could be massive on these types of schemes, and the HA aren't going to pay you if there is VAT elected on the asset. Hopefully that's useful. I actually don't know much about this space. All that I've just said now is stuff that I've kind of learned this week through various conversations. There's probably loads of stuff I don't know, or things that I've got wrong. So if you are in this space and you're listening and I've missed some key information, drop it in the comments below, because I'm interested to know more about this. We're looking to get into bigger schemes. We need to know how this process works. So any insider information that you can give, the better.
I would also just add to that, I've from my experience just speaking to some other developers, when you are packaging it up to a housing association or to an affordable housing arm, make sure you really seek their commitment. I've had a lot of developers that have packaged something up, agreed a sale, and then they've sort of Michael Jackson moonwalked out of the transaction, and it's a huge pain in the ass, because you might have spec'd it for that particular affordable housing provider, and they don't exchange, they don't do commitment fees. So you've got to rely on a lot of actually them performing. So make sure that because you just don't want to waste time, and that fundamentally they're not the most enterprising of outfits, so they're not get it done, make a decision. Only 3 people need to speak. It's a big consortium. They need to make a mutual decision between the trustees or whoever it may be, or the charity leaders, or even if it is more of a commercial outfit, the board. But I've heard pains before where people get to the last knockings and pull.
Nice. Cool. If you want to join us, Jack and I, and various other property developers in our boardroom sessions, do comment boardroom below, or email us and get in touch. The idea of this is that we help you scale your businesses. We've been in it for 7-8 years now, and been landlords for longer than that. So we've got lots of different property strategies under our belt, or in our property arsenal. And the idea is that we host a half a day session every month, to keep you accountable, to keep you on track, and guide you through the process of becoming better in property development and business. So if you're interested, drop a comment below or reach out to us. On to point number 7, asking the question, what offers do you have currently? You've been being cheeky here.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree. So I mean, a site this week, which I briefly mentioned to Ben, we've been working on, well, not working on, but we've been aware of it for years, literally like a few years. And we know it's been through the ringer a bit of going to market, agreeing a sale, maybe planning wasn't as successful as they hoped. Then it went back in for a new planning application, and so on and so forth. And anyway, I was on the phone to the vendor the other day, and I just asked the question, so what offers have you received today? And he literally just walked me through over the years, the offers, the details, the creativity, his feedback on them, what he was willing to do and what he wasn't willing to do. And I think if you aren't asking that question, you're leaving something on the table there. It's one of those questions that some people might find really offensive and keep their cards close to their chest. But if you ask it in the right way, you can actually save a huge amount of time than just fumbling around and trying to figure out what sort of price works for them. So as a result, this vendor basically told me what he needs today, what he needs to. He basically said, you can structure this creatively. You can give me a certain amount of today, and told me the amount. It was like, then you can defer another amount, which he told me the amount. And then he said, we're happy to do a deal at that level. I don't know if anyone else in the market has asked that question. So we've almost got a slight advantage to probably bid a little bit more in actual value. But when you factor in the sort of deferred payment, there's huge sort of credit in that. So I always say, in any sales, which acquiring sites is sales, the more information you have, the easier it becomes. So you need to be asking open then closed, and sort of opening questions as to find out as much as you can from the seller. You then need to understand their motivations, and what that is basically, what are they looking for? What do they need? For an example, this particular seller has got a mortgage that expires in October. So there's an amount that is required to pay that down. And then once that's taken care of, well, actually the weight is off and the time frames are off, and we can be a little bit more flexible. That might be what's needed to get the deal over the line. So the fundamentals are really understanding the vendor, their situation, what their concerns are and what their motives are. That might be money. They might want the higher price and they'd be patient for that, or they might want the speed and that therefore they're happy to look at a lower price. So understanding their motives, adapting the deal around it, and sort of creating that mold. And you've kind of got to understand and see the position from their side before you can propose something that might actually be beneficial for both parties. It's not all about guide prices there, see how close we can get to it and see how we get on. There's much more that needs to be understood from all parameters around that situation. I think you might be on mute, Ben.
I am now off mute. Cool, interesting. Cool. This is a bit more technical, I guess, session at the end of this, but I think people will find it interesting. You know, if you are going into development, at some point you're going to be hit with a barrage of mechanical and electrical details that you're going to want to understand. And what often happens is that those people that aren't educated in the process or understand it, or you've not got a good architect on the in your process, or you don't understand it from a technical perspective, what happens is you get so far through the project, and only when you turn up on site and start seeing them start to install where sockets are going and lighting is going and how they're running the gas meters and all this sort of stuff, that you start questioning, I didn't want that there, or we have to move that, and why is that over there? And I've seen this too many times, and it costs almost 4 times the amount of cost to change something on site than it does to change things on paper. So I wanted to sort of talk through the things that you should be looking out for, show you some of the layouts that we've recently received from one of our contractors on the old maltings in terms of how things are presented and the types of things that you should expect to see. And yeah, any questions that you've got off the back of this, let me know in the comments below. We try to keep things relatively high level in these things, but every now and again, it's nice to go into a bit of detail and show what I'm looking at and what we're looking at from our side, and feeding back to contractors, feeding back to our teams. And hopefully this section will be enlightening for a few people. So as part of the MEP drawing package, I've listed the things that you would expect to see. And these are the sort of, technical sort of notations of how you would call these. So small power and data. So we're talking about power sockets there, really, data outlets. We've got lighting, heating, plumbing, ventilation, drainage, and then you've got your utilities and your, whether that be gas, electric, water, and broadband. Those are the four main ones. But I'm going to stop sharing screen there and open Bluebeam, which again, if I haven't mentioned Bluebeam for a couple of weeks, it is my life. It's a PDF editing software, amazing for updating and marking up on drawings and feeding back and being collaborative with PDFs, with drawings, with CGIs, with anything that is in PDF format and allows you to get information across really quickly. So you'll see on the left hand side, I've got all of my drawings open. So this, for every floor, goes through, and I'll click through very quickly. So we've got the ones that I mentioned earlier. So this is a small power layout. This is the lighting layout. This is what a radiator and heating layout looks like. We've got the plumbing layout, which shows you all your hot and cold pipe work. You have got your ventilation and which routes your bathrooms are being ventilated to, where your boiler flue goes. And this is the drainage layout. So I've just gone through six drawings there of all the various different types of, and then you've got your utilities, so 7. So 7 layouts per floor plan, 1 layout per different service. And some people like to combine these. I actually, when I'm doing sort of architectural plans, I don't like splitting it out completely like this, because what can often happen is that if you're just working on this layout and you put a socket here, but don't realize that on the other layout there's a radiator in this location, obviously that's not going to work. So sometimes I like to see a little bit more information, so we can see more of a holistic approach to what the flat is going to look like with all of these things in one drawing, as opposed to split out like this. But just zooming into some of these, you can sort of see where the double sockets are going to be located either side of the bed head. The boiler will need a fused spur. The dishwasher, the hob, the extra, all of these things need fused spurs. And this is the sort of thing where it's often, if you leave it too late or you don't really understand it or know that they're going to be there, you get to site and your contractors, put 3 spurs over here, another spur over here. You can't get to this one because they've put it behind the fridge freezer, which you have to lift out, which just isn't right. So we would always like to see, a different, all of these fused spurs in one cabinet, whether it's at high level or low level, just so they're all in one place. And if you need to access or pull out your fridge freezer or defrost your fridge freezer, you can go in there and you can switch it off and defrost it from that location. But this is what a small power looks like. You've got a TV location here where we've got 2 sets of double sockets, 2 data points, and a TV aerial. And this will look different depending on which M&E engineer is doing it. But this particular MEP consultant, this is how they show their sort of TV plate effectively. And then you've got your shaver socket in your bathroom. So that's a bit of small power. Lighting should be relatively standard. You've got all of your lighting sockets, your lighting locations. You've got where your switches are going, whether they're 1 gang or 2 gang. And the difference of that is, so let's say I've got 1 switch on the wall. 1 switch on the wall, but it's connecting me to a set of lights above the staircase, whereby I need another light at the top of the stair so that they both work together. So there's a light fitting for these lights at the bottom of the stair and the top of the stair, and they'll be connected. So you can have 1 gang, 2 gang, 3 gang light switches, and it should note on these drawings which light switches switch which lights themselves. So it's a little bit on lighting, and then on to the central heating layout. So basically this is where's my boiler situated, how are we running all of the pipe work, and this sort of thing is really important because it really shows very quickly stuff that may or may not work for you. If you're having to take pipe work through another flat or run it under floor joists that you might create a fire break that shouldn't be, this is where you'll sort of spot those types of potential issues before it gets to site, before they call you to site and say, look, this isn't working. Then you have to spend loads of money rectifying something that they've put in incorrectly. And that's where most cost overruns happen. It's where they've contractors have installed things and they have to change it because there's been a mistake made. So getting this right on paper is just so important. Jack, if you got any questions as I go through this, then let me know. But
yeah, I mean, I do have one. So let's say I'm going to do a development, and this is like super detailed. This is way more detail than we go into central suites, but it's sometimes quite useful to do sort of like the details around which light switch. That's like a classic one, like the bed light switch switches it off, but then they don't communicate. So who would you push on to get this in place from a consultant's perspective, and at what point in the development would you be spending money on this to make sure it is?
So it is going to depend on the size of your project. Obviously, this is a 20-unit office conversion. The contractor that we've got working on this is very good. They're very on it. They're hot. And the information that they've provided is great. It's probably worth rolling things back actually to this particular project and the route that we went down. We decided very early on that we would get an MEP consultant to work with us at the detailed design stage. So working with us as the architect and the other consultants that structural engineer and the other consultants that we had to work with. And what we decided actually halfway through that process is that we didn't want to pay the consultant any more money, and we called it a day with them because the way that it was going, and the way it often goes with MEP consultants, is you pay a shitload of money for them, and what happens is when you get contractors on board, they have their own internal internal MEP contractors and suppliers and installers that come up with often better ideas because they're closer to the ground of what's cheap at the moment, where they can source certain things from, or better ways of doing things than a consultant, because a consultant is often going to go for a higher spec, or they're putting their PI on the line, right? So they're not going to want to flirt around the edges or suggest opportunities where there might be ways of doing things slightly better. They're going to be quite straight-laced, and they're going to suggest things that are probably more expensive than if you went to a contractor. What we ended up doing on this project is basically saying no MEP consultant, stop what you're doing. Actually, what we're going to do is push the MEP design over to the chosen contractor. And effectively what we did was agree on a sort of fixed amount of cost for the MEP per unit. So let's say of these 20 units, we ended up with a £500,000 MEP cost, where it's an average of 25 grand per flat for all of the MEP associated with that flat. And it was a good way for us of baselining the cost, stripping things down, and hopefully being a bit more lean on where things are at. And their contractor, their subcontractor, are who's now provided these drawings. So we've got a JCT contract with the main contractor. They then subcontract their MEP package to whoever they do, and their subcontractor has provided this suite of drawings for us to now review, tweak and amend, and trim a few things and move things around and sign things off from their perspective. And it felt like a much more, for me, efficient way of doing things, and I think a more cost-effective way of doing things, working directly with the contractor's subcontractor themselves and finding solutions that would have been more long-winded and probably costly with a consultant at the front end. So yeah, that's how we've got to this stage, really. And you won't need this for every development. If you know, I'd recommend it because it's going to save so much time on site. And it's when you come to the sort of scale of this, where it's 20 units, there's so much. If something goes wrong, it's not going to be a 200 quid change to get someone back to change it. You know, it could be thousands and tens of thousands of pounds trying to rectify something or do something on site and change your mind. So when you're working on bigger schemes, you're going to want to have a package of drawings like this that you can go through, and there's no ambiguity. You know, we're going to be starting on these installations probably in about 2 months' time. We've got a good amount of time now to sit down with the MEP contractor, go through all of our comments, meet on site, talk everything through, and it starts to also unlock a few things. We hadn't quite thought about that, or maybe there's a better way of doing this, or our utilities, can't come in there because of X, Y, and Z. So we need to work out how to best do the utilities. And yeah, that's that. These are now the conversations that we're having. You can see all my scribbles on screen. This is me sort of saying, this can't come in here, or why don't we move the meters over here because it's better located? This clashes with the gas meter. All of these comments are sort of me going through it detail by detail, which your architect should do to coordinate with all of the architectural pieces as well. So this is the water and the water layout. So where your hot and cold feeds are going, connecting into your boiler, connecting into your toilets and your sinks and your showers. Moving swiftly on to ventilation, so you can see where the ventilation is going to go and where it's going to be ducted. And these are things that, if you leave it to your builder on a small project, they might figure it out. But the amount of times I've been on site and sort of question, well, why have you gone that way? Why have you put the ventilation out here and not out here? And it just sometimes, a lot of the time, it doesn't make sense. So when you've got it on paper like this, there's no ambiguity. The subcontractor is going to get straight in there and do it as you expected, because you've gone through a detailed design process, you've reviewed it with them, you've made comments, you've met on site, you've made sure it works before they've started the works. And then there's no, potential cost implications of them installing something that isn't right. Quickly onto the drainage. So this is a drainage layout. You've got your sort of SVPs and then all of your washing machines and your sinks and your drainage. This is foul drainage. And that's what this looks like. There's a few ambiguities that we've got at the moment. That's why I've sort of highlighted these to say, look, we need to check these on site. And then you've got your utilities. So where are your gas meters going to be located? Where are your water meters? Where's your electrical mains coming in? How is that then split? And to really kind of confuse people that just don't understand what they're looking at all, because they're not in the space. And I get that this isn't for everyone, but if you want to be a better developer and know how to approach speaking with architects, how to approach working with MEP consultants, what you don't want to do is get the wool covered over your eyes. You need to know a little bit about it, so you can push back on things and make sure that they're going to give you the product that you want. So this is a schematic of a boiler where it's all linked to your radiators. You'll get details like this. I mean, this is very full on. This is a full electrical schematic. So you've got the electrical head coming in here, then it splits down to the various apartments. Then in the apartments, it then splits down to the various other connections. What else have we got here? I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You've got your satellite TV and your aerials. Where are these going? How are they connected? What systems are in place to kind of connect them to each apartment? What cables are they going to be using? I mean, this is a full detailed design subcontract MEP package that is very robust. So yeah, there you have it.
And then the builders won't follow it at all, and
then you get on site and it's wrong anyway. Yeah.
And then you'll have version over version over version, and then one of the versions didn't go out to one of the parties, and they've designed something wrong for a week.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a running joke in working for the Berkeley Group in the basement, because it's all quite tight with the basement. You've got not got much head height, but basically it became like a first come first serve. So if the drainage got in first, you'd have the drainage run going at a high level, and then you'd have the electrician who'd come with his tray and just go, but underneath it, across you go. Just different services crossing each other all over the place. And
I would say one of the reasons that there's two reasons that you don't do these on smaller projects, and one is it's the cost, and sometimes the cost isn't really warranted for all the work, and two, sometimes when everything is so detailed and instruction orientated, when they have to go off piste, it just holds up the project loads. Whereas if you're if we're doing a back to brick renovation on a house, we won't have any of these drawings, so they're kind of figuring it out from the get-go, and it doesn't alter the job when they got to go, actually hang on, that's, we were on site yesterday in Wallingford, and Richard said to me, we're 3-4 months in, and he's like, I don't know where to get this waste out for this toilet, and we walked around and figured it out on site. We eventually found a route out for it. But that's an example of, if we had it drawn up, that would have been dealt with in the drawings, but other problems might have then held things up. But the principle is that job's too small. It's 150k build contract. So to do, probably best part of £8,000 worth of the detail design probably wouldn't be warranted.
Hopefully that was interesting and useful for some people. It won't be everyone's cup of tea, but I'm sure everything that we talk about isn't everyone's cup of tea, but it's useful as a background. Questions. So we had a question earlier this week. When can a council legally begin charging council tax? Are they able to prior to building control sign-off and or planning conditions not signed off? So when we finish a development, whether that be new build or change of use, you have to get street numbering organised via the council and the post office. And then you'll have to notify the council tax VOA, banding department. You tell them effectively when the site is going to be ready for completion, and they will start charging you council tax from that date. So it's often a difficult one. You obviously don't want to start spending money on council tax too soon, but fundamentally, once it's habitable and signed off by building control, they should be notified that the project has completed and is habitable, and therefore council tax banding starts or costs. Does that answer it?
Yeah.
Cool. Good.
Bingo.
All right. Well, lots to take in that one. Some technical stuff, from interesting numbers. But if you enjoyed it, let us know. Please do review and comment, and hopefully see you again next week, unless there's anything you wanted to touch on, Jack.
No, that's all good from me.
Perfect. Right. Catch you then. Cheers.